She looked at him and said, "I trust you," but what she really meant was, "Don't disappoint me." Have you ever felt the crushing weight of someone's trust, and realized it was just another word for a cage? In the heart of a fictional city called Aruvia, where the streets hummed with the quiet rhythm of ordinary lives, something extraordinary was about to happen. It was an evening like any other, the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. But in a small hall on the edge of the city, a man named Raman Hale was preparing to say something that would shake the very foundation of how people understood love, relationships, and trust. Raman wasn't famous. He wasn't a celebrity or a guru draped in robes. He was just a man, quiet, thoughtful, with eyes that seemed to see through the layers of pretense we all carry. And on this particular evening, he stood before a gathered crowd, ready to speak a truth that most people had spent their entire lives avoiding. The hall was modest. Wooden chairs arranged in uneven rows. A single lamp casting warm light across the room. People sat close together, some curious, some skeptical, all waiting. There was tension in the air, the kind that comes when you sense something important is about to be said, but you're not sure if you're ready to hear it. Raman stood at the front, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Let me ask you something," Raman began, his voice calm but piercing. "When you say you trust someone, what do you really mean?" The question hung in the air like smoke. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Someone coughed. No one answered. "I'll tell you what most of us mean," Raman continued. "We mean, I expect you to behave the way I want you to behave. We mean, don't disappoint me. Don't prove me wrong. Don't make me look like a fool for believing in you." A woman in the third row crossed her arms. A man near the back frowned. "We dress it up in beautiful language," Raman said. "We call it trust. We call it love. We call it commitment. But underneath all those words, there's something else, something we don't want to admit. We're not trusting people. We're controlling them." The room grew quieter. You could hear the distant sound of traffic outside, the hum of the city carrying on, unaware that in this small space, people were beginning to question everything they thought they knew. Raman paused, then told a story. There was a couple, let's call them Maya and Arjun. They'd been together for years. Maya loved Arjun deeply. She would tell him, "I trust you completely." And she meant it. Or at least, she thought she did. But watch what happened whenever Arjun did something Maya didn't expect. Maybe he came home late without calling. Maybe he made a decision without asking her first. Maybe he spent time with friends when she wanted him home. Every time, Maya felt hurt. Betrayed. She would say, "I trusted you. How could you do this?" And Arjun? He felt suffocated. He loved Maya, but he couldn't breathe. Every choice he made was shadowed by the question, will this disappoint her? Will this break her trust? He wasn't living his life anymore. He was performing a role in Maya's expectations. People in the audience nodded slowly. Some looked down at their hands. They recognized this story. They'd lived it, some as Maya, some as Arjun, most as both. Raman walked to the side of the small stage, his footsteps echoing softly. "I want you to imagine something," he said. "Imagine a dog wearing an electronic collar. You know the kind, it creates an invisible boundary. The dog can't see a fence, can't see a chain, but if it crosses a certain line, it gets a shock. A punishment for going too far. Now, the dog isn't physically tied down. It can move. It can run around within the allowed space. It even looks free. But is it? Really? That collar is what I call soft imprisonment. No visible chains. No locked doors. But freedom? No. Not at all." He turned back to face the audience. "This is what we do to each other in the name of trust. We create invisible boundaries. We don't tie people down with ropes, that would be too obvious, too cruel. Instead, we use expectations. We use guilt. We use disappointment. We use the phrase, 'I trusted you,' like a weapon. And the person we claim to trust? They live in constant fear of crossing that invisible line. They monitor their every move, their every word, terrified of the shock that comes from disappointing us." A young man in the front row looked stricken. His girlfriend sat beside him, her expression unreadable. "The cruelest part," Raman continued, his voice softer now, almost sad, "is that both people suffer. The one being controlled feels trapped, suffocated, slowly losing themselves. And the one doing the controlling? They live in constant anxiety, constantly watching, constantly waiting for betrayal, never at peace. Nobody wins. Nobody is free. And yet we call this love. We call this trust." Raman moved back to the center. His presence filled the room, not with authority, but with the quiet weight of truth. "Here's another problem," he said. "From the time we're children, we're taught to label things. This is good. That is bad. This is right. That is wrong. And once we've labeled something as good, we expect everyone to live up to that standard. We expect people to be honest, because honesty is good. We expect people to be loyal, because loyalty is good. We expect people to keep their promises, because keeping promises is good. And all of that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Who could argue with wanting good things? He paused. But here's what happens. When we expect goodness from everyone, we set ourselves up for endless disappointment. Because reality doesn't care about our labels. People are complex. They're messy. They make mistakes. They change. They act from their own understanding, their own pain, their own limitations. And when they don't meet our expectations, when they're not as good as we decided they should be, we feel betrayed. We feel hurt. We blame them for breaking our trust. But did they really betray us? Or did we betray ourselves by expecting them to be something they never promised to be? The woman in the third row, the one who'd crossed her arms earlier, uncrossed them. Her eyes were glistening. Think about the cycle, Raman said. It goes like this. First, we create an expectation. We decide how someone should behave. Then, we trust them, but our trust is really just a disguised expectation. Eventually, they do something that doesn't match our expectation. We feel disappointed, betrayed, hurt. We blame them. We say they broke our trust. The relationship cracks. Sometimes it breaks completely. And then we move on to the next person, and start the cycle all over again. He let the words settle. What if, he said quietly, the problem isn't betrayal? What if the problem is the expectation itself? The room was completely silent now. Even the sounds from outside seemed to have faded away. People sat motionless, caught in the gravity of the question. What if, Raman continued, instead of trusting people to meet our expectations, we simply saw them clearly? What if we used intelligence instead of idealism? What if we accepted that everyone, including ourselves, acts from their own level of understanding, their own circumstances, their own fears and desires? What if we stopped trying to make people fit into our version of good and instead responded to who they actually are? A turning point had arrived. You could feel it in the room, a shift, like the moment before dawn when darkness begins to lose its grip. Raman looked out at the faces before him. Some were tearful. Some were thoughtful. All were listening. I know what you're thinking, he said gently. You're thinking, but if I don't have expectations, doesn't that mean I don't care? If I don't trust people to be good, doesn't that make me cynical? He smiled, a small, knowing smile. No, he said. It makes you free. And in the next part of this conversation, I'm going to show you what that freedom looks like. The first chapter of the evening had ended. But the real revelation was still to come. The room remained still as Raman began again. The energy had shifted, from tension to something deeper, something like hope mixed with uncertainty. Let me tell you about a flower, Raman said, and a few people looked confused. Where was he going with this? Think about a flower, he continued. It doesn't try to be good. It doesn't make moral decisions. It doesn't worry about meeting expectations. And yet, look at how perfectly it functions. The way it opens to the sun. The way it attracts the right insects for pollination. The way its colors, its scent, its very structure all work in harmony with its environment. There's intelligence there. Profound intelligence. Not morality. Not goodness. Just intelligence. He crouched down slightly, as if examining something on the ground. Or think about an ant. Tiny, seemingly insignificant. But watch an ant navigate its world. Watch how it finds food, communicates with its colony, builds intricate structures. There's no moral code guiding it. No expectations. Just clear, precise intelligence responding to reality as it is. He stood back up. Now imagine if we brought that same approach to our relationships. Not morality, intelligence. Not expectations, clarity. If someone repeatedly does things that harm the relationship, the question isn't, how could they betray my trust? The question is, what is this person showing me about who they are? And how do I respond intelligently to that reality? A middle-aged man in the audience raised his hand slightly, hesitant. Yes? Raman said. But, doesn't that sound cold? The man asked. Like you're just calculating everything? Raman nodded. I understand why it might sound that way. But let me give you an example. Imagine you have a friend, we'll call him David. David borrows money from you and promises to pay it back. He doesn't. You give him another chance. He borrows again. Doesn't pay back again. This happens 3, 4, 5 times. Now, most people approach this in one of two ways. The first way, you keep lending money because you trust David. You get angry each time he doesn't pay you back. You feel betrayed. You lecture him about responsibility. You damage your own peace of mind and your bank account, all while David continues being exactly who he is. The second way, you recognize the pattern. You see clearly that David, for whatever reason, is not someone who pays back borrowed money. Not because he's evil, just because that's what his actions have consistently shown you. So you make an intelligent decision, you stop lending him money. Not with anger. Not with a speech about trust. Just a clear boundary based on reality. The man who'd asked the question nodded slowly. Do you see the difference? Raman asked. Intelligence doesn't demand that David change. It doesn't punish him. It doesn't label him as bad. It simply responds to what is true. And in doing so, it protects your peace, your resources, and even the relationship, because you're not building resentment. Raman walked to the edge of the small stage and sat down, his legs dangling over the side. It was an informal gesture that made him seem more like a friend sharing a secret than a speaker giving a talk. So what is real trust? He asked. If it's not about expecting people to behave a certain way, what is it? He looked out at the audience. Real trust is being at ease with whatever another person does. Not because you approve of everything. Not because you have no boundaries. Not because you don't care. But because you are not trying to control them. Real trust means, I see you as a separate being with your own path, your own understanding, your own choices. And I am at peace with that. A woman near the back spoke up, her voice shaky. But what if they hurt you? What if they leave you? Raman met her eyes with compassion. That's the fear, isn't it? He said gently. That's the fear underneath all our attempts at control. We're terrified of being hurt. Of being abandoned. Of being proven wrong about someone we love. So we try to prevent it. We create expectations. We monitor behavior. We use trust as a leash, hoping it will keep people close and keep us safe. But here's the truth, it doesn't work. It never works. People who want to leave will leave, whether you trust them or not. People who want to hurt you will hurt you, whether you have expectations or not. And people who are meant to stay, who genuinely care for you, they don't need your expectations. They'll care for you because they want to, not because they're afraid of disappointing you. Tears were flowing now, not just from the woman who'd asked, but from several people in the room. When you stop trying to control someone, Raman continued, something miraculous happens. The relationship becomes honest. Maybe painfully honest, but honest. If they stay, you know they're staying because they want to, not because they're trapped by guilt or expectation. If they leave, you know the relationship wasn't serving either of you, and you've saved yourself years of struggle. And if they make choices you don't agree with? You're free to respond however you need to, with boundaries, with distance, even with goodbye, but you're responding from clarity, not from the chaos of broken expectations. He stood up again. This is what liberation looks like. Both people free. Both people honest. Both people able to be themselves without fear. Is it easy? No. It requires tremendous courage to let go of control. It requires faith, not in the other person, but in yourself, in your ability to handle whatever comes. But it's the only way to have real relationships. Real love. Real trust. The evening was drawing to a close. The light in the hall had deepened to a warm gold. Outside, the city of Aruvia continued its rhythm, people coming home from work, children playing in the streets, life moving forward as it always does. But inside this small space, something had shifted permanently for those who'd been listening. Raman stood at the center one last time. I want to leave you with one final thought, he said. Trust should never be a tool for possession. Never a way to claim ownership over another person's choices, their time, their life. When trust is genuine, it liberates both people. It says, I respect your freedom. I respect your journey. I respect your right to be who you are. And paradoxically, that kind of trust creates more intimacy, more connection, than control ever could. Because when people feel free, when they don't feel constantly monitored and judged, they can actually be themselves. And that's when real love becomes possible. He smiled, a full, genuine smile. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to go home and immediately remove all expectations from your relationships. But maybe, just maybe, you can start by noticing. Notice when you're using trust as a way to control. Notice when you're hurt because someone didn't meet an expectation you never clearly communicated, or one they never agreed to. Notice the invisible chains. And then, gently, courageously, start taking them off. Not just off others. Off yourself too. Because you deserve to live without the constant fear of disappointing people. And the people you love deserve to live without the constant fear of disappointing you. The room was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not tense. Not uncomfortable. Just present. Raman nodded once, a gesture of completion, and stepped back. People began to stand slowly, gathering their things, but no one rushed to leave. They moved carefully, as if they were carrying something fragile, a new understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of a question they'd spend the rest of their lives answering. Outside, the sun had fully set. The city of Aruvia glowed with streetlights and the soft illumination from windows. People walked its streets as they always had, but maybe, just maybe, a few of them walked a little differently now. A little freer. A little more honest. A little more willing to trust without chains. So let me ask you, watching this now, what invisible chains are you wearing? What invisible chains have you placed on others? What would happen if you tried trusting just once without expectations? Not recklessly. Not blindly. But with clarity, with intelligence, with the courage to let people be who they are while you protect your own peace? It might be terrifying. It might change everything. But it might also be the most freeing thing you ever do. The choice, as always, is yours. And that's the beautiful, terrifying truth, it always has been.